Last September, Barbara Kinney stood in the CVS on Tillotson Avenue and put a tube of Biofreeze back on the shelf. $14.99, and she didn't have it. Not without shorting herself on groceries, and she wasn't going to do that. She drove home with her shoulder burning the whole way, telling herself it wasn't that bad. Today she's in that same aisle, and she takes the Biofreeze off the shelf without checking the price. She takes reading glasses too, the ones with the magnifier strip at the bottom, which she's needed for close work for 2 years and kept putting off. And she takes vitamins. She pays with her debit card and doesn't do the math in her head first. That's new. All of this started with a thimble her mother left her, a coat lining that split down the seam, and a 5-year-old boy who wanted to be a bunny. But before she got here, she was swindled out of $66 in fabric. She fell out with her best friend of 30 years. And her sewing machine snapped apart at 9 in the evening with 11 days left to finish 2 costumes. Here is what happened, and here is what she learned. Friends, drop a comment. Where are you from, and does your social security check actually last till the end of the month? We'd love to know who's listening. And hit that like button so this story reaches someone who needs to hear it right now. The morning at CVS was ordinary. Fluorescent light, the smell of cleaning solution and plastic, quiet music from speakers in the ceiling that Barb could never quite identify, only sense that it was there. She found Biofreeze in aisle 3, on the right, next to the knee supports and heat patches. She picked up the tube, looked at the price, $14.99, and put it back. Not because her shoulder didn't hurt. Her shoulder had hurt since August, since the day she helped her downstairs neighbour Patty carry boxes down from the attic, and something shifted in the joint that shouldn't have. And now her right shoulder reminded her of its presence every time she raised her arm. But $14.99 was almost $15 that had to come from somewhere else, and there wasn't much somewhere else left. She drove home along Tillotson Avenue, past the closed movie theatre, past the auto shop, past the China buffet that seemed never to close and was always exactly half empty. At home, she sat at the kitchen table, small, with a plastic tablecloth in a blue check pattern that she and Norm had bought at Walmart 20 years ago, and that had since faded to a dull grey blue, and opened the folder. Not a nice one, not leather, just a plain plastic folder she called her budget folder. On the first of every month, she sat at this table and wrote things down. Social Security, $1,580. That number hadn't changed since the beginning of the year, and Barb had long since stopped expecting it would. The COLA adjustment added something like $20 or $30, and those dollars covered exactly the increase in the price of milk. Rent, $820. A 2-bedroom on Glenwood Avenue, 2nd floor, gentle staircase. Barb had specifically looked for a gentle staircase when her back started making itself known 2 years ago. The landlord, Mrs. Petrova, had collected last month's rent up front, but hadn't raised it since. You are a good tenant, Barbara. Medicare Part B, $174. Fixed, understood, accepted. Plus Part D for prescriptions, $28 a month, which had seemed reasonable. Groceries, $340. That was if she bought chicken instead of beef, chose Kroger brand where possible, and never went to the store hungry. She had developed the rule about not shopping hungry herself, empirically, after coming home from the doctor's office once without having eaten lunch and finding 3 packages of graham crackers and 2 bags of trail mix on the counter. Utilities, $160. Gas, electric, internet. You couldn't go without internet because Brenda called on FaceTime and because it was easier to refill prescriptions online. Bus, $75. She had a car, an old Buick LeSabre, 2003, which Norm had loved more than a person should probably love a car, but gas and insurance were separate lines, and sometimes the bus was cheaper. Medications, $185. 3 prescriptions. Blood pressure, back, stomach. Every month, no skipping. Otherwise her pressure spiked to 165 and her back locked up so that getting from the bed to the kitchen became an expedition. Barb drew a horizontal line and wrote at the bottom, balance, minus $430. Minus 430. Every month, every first of the month, the same number with a minus sign in front of it, which she covered from what she called Norm's Fund, a savings account Norm had added to all his life, in small amounts, methodically, the way Norm did everything. About $8,000 remained. At this rate, a year and a half. Then the fund would run out and she would need to figure out something else. But a year and a half was not right now. That was how she was thinking when the envelope came. The envelope was white, with the Medicare logo, the summary notice that arrived quarterly and was usually dull. Here's what was prescribed, here's what's covered, here's your share. Barb opened it at the kitchen table on a Wednesday morning, without particular preparation, the way you open a bank statement, skimmed it, and stopped. The line she wasn't expecting was at the bottom, in small print, under the heading, Coverage Gap, Your Share, $390. She read it again, more slowly. This was the so-called donut hole, the coverage gap in Part D that you fall into when your total prescription costs for the year exceed a certain threshold. Barb knew about the donut hole in theory. They had explained it when she signed up. She had read the brochure. But the brochure had seemed to be about someone else, someone with expensive medications. She had 3 cheap generics. That wasn't expensive. Apparently, added up over the year, it was $390, the entire free balance for October, and $40 more beyond that, which she didn't have. She put the envelope on the table and looked at it for a long time, the way you look at a diagnosis you didn't see coming. Outside the window, a bus went along Glenwood, empty, moving slowly, the way buses always move in Muncie on a weekday. Barb waited until it disappeared around the corner, then got up and walked to the window. On the windowsill there were a few things. A small cactus in a pot, a photo of Lily on her last birthday, 8 years old, pink dress, chocolate cake, the kind of happiness on her face that only exists at age 8, and a small glass shot glass holding a copper thimble. Her mother's. Small, with fine ridging around the rim, warm from the morning sun that came through this window. Her mother had had 3 of them. She had given one to Barb when Barb started sewing, around age 12, and Barb had never lost it, though she had lost many other things. Behind the shot glass, slightly further back, lay a piece of fabric, gold lame, heavy, with a cold metallic sheen. Barb had taken it from Hartwell Garment Company on the last day the factory was open. Not stolen. It was a written-off remnant, official, with the warehouse manager's signature on the disposal sheet. She hadn't known why she was taking it. She just hadn't wanted to leave it behind. It was beautiful. Gold, like something that doesn't exist in ordinary life. She had left Hartwell in 2011, along with 243 other people on the same day, when they welded the gates shut, and that was that. 38 years. First as a seamstress on the production line, then as a floor supervisor, then as a seamstress again when they cut the floor supervisor position and she asked to go back to the line because sewing was better than not working. When Hartwell closed, Barb was 62 and she retired. The sewing machine, her mother's Singer 99K, black with gold trim, made in 1958, had sat under a linen cover by the window in the bedroom ever since. Like something from a past life that you don't throw away but don't use either. That evening, after the envelope, after the 430 in the minus column plus 390 more, Barb couldn't sleep. She lay looking at the ceiling, and the particular late-night arithmetic ran through her head, the kind that leads nowhere. If she skipped part of the utilities this month, no, she couldn't. If she ate meat less often, she was already down to once a week. If she asked Brenda, no. Brenda was raising 2 kids on 1 salary in Indianapolis, and didn't complain, but Barb knew it wasn't easy there either. You don't ask. Around midnight, she got up, went to the bedroom, and lifted the linen cover off the Singer. The machine was as she had left it, black, heavy, with the polished handwheel and the smell of old machine oil and metal that she had known since childhood. She threaded it without thinking. Her hands found the spool, guided the thread through the guides, set it through the needle eye. Picked up a piece of fabric from the chair, the sleeve of one of Norm's old shirts, which she hadn't thrown out after he died and didn't know what to do with. Ran a seam along the edge. The thread laid straight. The machine worked as if there had been no 38 years under the cover. Barb sat at the Singer at 1 a.m, sewing a scrap of fabric for no reason except that her hands wanted to work. And somewhere around 2, she thought, the alteration shop on McGalliard Road, the one with the alterations and tailoring sign in the window, charged $45 to replace a coat lining. She had seen their price list a month ago when she went in to ask about a zipper on a jacket. $45. That was an hour of work, no more. In the morning, Brenda called. The usual Sunday conversation, 20 minutes. She said Lily was preparing for a school performance in December. Choir singing, Oh Christmas Tree. The class had been rehearsing for a month already. Mum, it's too bad you're so far away, Brenda said, and said it not as a complaint, just as a fact. Barb wanted to say, I'll come, and didn't, because a bus ticket, Muncie to Indianapolis round trip, was $120, plus a gift for Lily, plus a week there. $250 minimum. At minus $430 a month, that was 3 months with no unexpected expenses at all. Instead of, I'll come, she said, tell her I'm proud of her. And the conversation moved on. The way all conversations move on when the important thing goes unsaid. Gloria Perkins showed up on Monday, without calling. She never called. 29 years as a mail carrier in Muncie had given her the habit of simply arriving and knocking. 3 times, confident, the knock of someone who knows for certain that you're home. She was in the doorway in her blue windbreaker, holding a grey wool coat over one arm. Barb, my coat lining split along the seam, right here, down the middle. I checked, it's about 12 inches from the collar down. The shop on McGalliard wants $45. 45, Barb, for a lining. Gloria, I'm not an alterations shop. You sewed at Hartwell for 38 years. You could reline this coat in your sleep. Would you do it? I'll bring you blueberry muffins. I made a batch this morning. For muffins, Barb said flatly. Or tell me what to pay. I'll pay you properly. Leave the coat. I'll look at it. Gloria left the coat and went. Barb picked it up, turned it inside out. The lining, thin polyester, had split cleanly along the centre-back seam, about 12 inches. An hour's work. Thread she had. Cost of the repair? 0. She looked at the coat, then at the budget folder, then back at the coat. The Singer came on again that evening. She finished Gloria's coat in 1 session, stitched the lining back along the seam, reinforced it with a bias tape strip so it wouldn't split again, pressed it through a damp cloth. Clean, even, invisible. No one would know there had been a split. Gloria came back for it the next day, tried it on in the entryway, turned to look in the little mirror with the metal frame. Barb, your hands are golden. What do I owe you? Nothing. We've known each other 29 years. If you won't take money, I'm bringing muffins. That's final. Barb accepted the muffins, blueberry, still warm, the kind that crack on top when they bake. She put the kettle on, and while they sat at the kitchen table, Gloria mentioned in passing, You know, Patty downstairs was saying her nephew's class has a school play coming up. They need costumes. Maybe you'd want to take that on? Barb said, I don't know. But that evening she went back to the Singer, and her mother's thimble sat on the windowsill in its glass, copper and warm, waiting. Patty Odom lived on the first floor, directly below Barb, and conducted herself like someone who always had something to report. She worked the register at Kroger 3 days a week, so I don't sit home and lose my mind, as she put it, and knew approximately everything about the building. When the landlord's boiler broke down, Patty knew before the landlord called the plumber. When the new tenant on the third floor got a dog, Patty knew the breed, the dog's name, and its walking schedule before anyone else had seen the animal. Patty called on Wednesday morning while Barb was cleaning the Singer, having removed the front cover to oil the mechanism. "Barb, hi. Can you sew kids' costumes?" "Depends what kind." "My nephew Dylan's class has a play next week. He's a bunny. The costume at Target is $85 and it looks, like a trash bag. Could you make him a real one? I'll pay." Barb looked at the Singer, at the cover in her hand, at the oil on the rag. "$85, she said. "Fabric is mine. I'll need measurements, height, chest, sleeve length, and tell him the ears will stand up." Patty sent the measurements within the hour. Dylan, 5.5, 38 inches tall. Barb opened the notebook, a plain grid notebook she'd kept in the kitchen drawer since her church bazaar days, and wrote, "White fleece, wireframe ears, pom-pom tail, pink lining for ears. Cost: white fleece, 2 yards at $6.50 per yard, $13. Thread, on hand. Wire, from an old hanger, free. Pink fabric for ear lining, a scrap of cotton in the drawer, free. Total materials, $13. From the client, $85. Net, $72. She started cutting that afternoon. On the third day, fitting the ears, long on frames made from hanger wire, covered in white fleece with a pink lining, she ran into a problem. She had Dylan's measurements, but how do you check the fit of the hood before the child arrives? She didn't have a 5-year-old on hand. She did have Patches, a cat from the third floor who belonged to the neighbour upstairs, but regularly let himself in through Barb's balcony door, on account of Barb having once fed him a piece of tuna, and the cat having interpreted this as a binding contract. Patches was asleep on the armchair. Barb looked at the cat, looked at the hood. "Patches," she said, "this is for research purposes." The cat did not wake up on the first attempt to put the hood on. He woke up on the second, looked at Barb with the expression of a person who has just been deeply offended, and vacated the armchair. The hood remained in Barb's hands, but she had learned one thing. The fit was good, but the ties needed to be an inch longer, otherwise they would pull under a live child's chin. She wrote in the notebook, "Ties plus 1 inch." The costume was ready Friday evening. White jumpsuit with hood, ears standing straight, pom-pom tail on the back, round, fluffy, the size of a small child's fist. Barb hung it on a hanger and stepped back. Good. Not good enough. Actually good. A thing made well. Dylan came Saturday with Patty. He climbed into the jumpsuit right there in the entryway, pulled up the hood, looked in the small mirror on the wall, and turned to his aunt. "Aunt Patty, I look like a real bunny." Patty photographed him from 6 angles, paid $85 cash, a 50 and 3/10, and left. Barb closed the door, went to the kitchen, and wrote in the notebook, 85 minus 13 equals 72. First order. The next morning, Sunday, Barb opened Nextdoor, just to check the neighbourhood news, as she did most mornings, and she saw Patty's post. A photo of Dylan in the bunny costume, a good photo, the boy standing against a white wall, ears pointing straight up, tail visible from behind, his face bright with the happiness of a child who has just become a rabbit. Caption: "My nephew Dylan's bunny costume, made by our neighbour Barbara Kinney on Glenwood Avenue. $85 and she's amazing. Her number is..." and Barb's phone number. Barb read this twice. Then she called Patty. "Patty, you could have asked me first." "Barb, don't be upset. Look how many likes. People are writing in." People were indeed writing. While Barb had been looking at the screen, 17 comments had appeared. "That's incredible. Does she do foxes?" "I need a wolf. Our play is Friday." How much for a snowman? Barb closed the phone, paused, opened it again, and copied the phone numbers from the comments into her notebook. On Monday, 4 people called. Barb answered each one the same way. Yes, I do that. I'll need the child's measurements. I'll give you a turnaround time on the call. Price starts at $85. That last part she said with a small hesitation, because naming a price out loud still felt awkward, like charging for something she didn't quite think of as real work. But she said it. On the 5th call, Diane. Her voice was businesslike, quick, precise, with the manner of someone accustomed to phone transactions. She wanted 3 costumes, a cat, a witch, and Dracula, for children ages 7, 5, and 3. Deadline, 9 days. Price for 3? Diane asked. $85 each, $255 total. I'll need measurements and… Perfect, I'll send measurements today. Payment on pickup. Does that work? Yes, said Barb, and only after she hung up did she realise she hadn't asked for a deposit. She had meant to. She had been thinking about it through the whole conversation. Ask about the deposit. But Diane's voice had been so assured that somehow the moment passed. Payment on pickup had sounded reasonable. The measurements came that evening, a text message with 3 lines of numbers. Barb bought fabric, black fleece for the cat and Dracula, purple satin for the witch's hat. $66. She paid cash to feel the money leaving her hands. She made the 3 costumes in 6 days. The cat, jumpsuit with hood, triangular ears, wire-frame tail. The witch, a long skirt of black tulle, a purple satin hat. Dracula, a cape with a scalloped hem, stand-up collar. Everything pressed, everything even. On Saturday, she texted Diane. Costumes are ready. When would you like to pick them up? Diane didn't reply. On Sunday, Barb called. Voicemail. On Monday, voicemail again. On Tuesday, she sent one more message, short. Diane, you ordered 3 Halloween costumes. Please respond. Silence. The costumes hung in the bedroom. The cat, the witch, Dracula. Neat, carefully made, uncollected. Barb looked at them and ran the arithmetic in her head. $66 of fabric, 6 days of work, and a Dracula costume for a 3-year-old that no one was going to pick up. She didn't cry. She was angry. Not at Diane, but at herself. At the word awkward that had stopped her when she needed to ask for a deposit. 50% up front. Not greed, just standard practice. At Hartwell, they did it with fabric suppliers every single time. Why had she decided it was different with neighbours? Barb opened the notebook and wrote in large letters, underlined twice, 50% deposit before buying fabric. She added a star beside it and wrote, don't explain, state it as fact. It was exactly that evening that Gloria came with the skirt. Barb hadn't had time to miss her arrival. Gloria let herself in, as always, 3 firm knocks, and laid a skirt on the table. Dark green wool, with a fitted waistband and a hidden side zipper. A good skirt. Barb could see it immediately. Real wool, dense, with clean drape. Barb, take it in at the waist. I've lost weight, it's loose. Barb took the measuring tape, measured Gloria. 4 centimetres of difference at the waist. That wasn't just taking in the sides. The waistband needed to be taken apart, the yoke recut, the zipper repositioned, everything restitched. At least 4 hours. Gloria, there's a lot of work here. It's not just a simple tuck. So, you know how to do it? Barb started that same evening. She opened the waistband, detached the yoke, took 2 centimetres from each side, restitched the darts, reattached the waistband. And then, it was nearly 10, her back ached, her eyes were tired. She made a decision she would later call professional impatience. She didn't reposition the zipper. She decided she could compensate by shifting the side seam. She knew in that moment that it was wrong. She knew it in her hands, literally while she was sewing. But it was late, and Gloria had asked for it by morning. Gloria came in the morning, put the skirt on in the entryway, and looked in the mirror. Barb watched her face change, slowly, the way the sky changes before a storm, still light but not in a good way. "Barb?" Gloria's voice was level, no raised pitch, which was worse than raised. "It's pulling at the hip. Right here. There's a diagonal crease." Barb saw it. A slight diagonal wrinkle running from the zipper to the side seam, shallow but visible, and with every step the fabric shifted slightly on the right side. "Gloria, I can fix it. I need to reposition the zipper, then it'll lie flat. It's a couple more hours." A couple more hours. Gloria folded the skirt and laid it carefully on the chair. Too carefully. "Barb, this is the only nice skirt I own. I gave it to you as a friend. And you... I should have taken it to the shop." "Let me fix it." "No, I'll sort it out myself." She left, and the door closed quietly. Not a slam. Quiet. Barb stood in the entryway and listened to Gloria's footsteps fading down the stairs. Slow, deliberate, each one echoing in the hollow stairwell where it smelled of the neighbours' cooking and old paint. Barb went to the kitchen and sat down. Her hands lay flat on the table, still. She didn't speak out loud against herself. She thought clearly, the way a floor supervisor reviews a defect. Error identified, cause identified. How to prevent recurrence. Error. Skipped repositioning the zipper. Cause. Fatigue and wanting to finish fast. Prevention. No complex alterations in the evening with a morning deadline. Or, better still, for complex work, a second morning review with fresh eyes before delivery. At Hartwell, she would have written herself up for a seam like that. Gloria did not call the next day. Or the day after, or the following week. Barb didn't call either. Not out of pride, but out of that tight, contained sense of owing something that wouldn't let her pick up the phone until she had fixed the skirt. And Gloria hadn't left the skirt. The chair by the wall, where Gloria usually sat for tea, stood empty. At the end of October, Kevin called. He lived in Columbus, worked at an insurance company, called every 2 weeks, and always started with, "How are you, Mum?" and ended with, "Just say the word if you need anything." He was a good son, and Barb knew it. Which was exactly why she didn't want him calling that particular evening. "Mum," said Kevin, "I have a colleague from Muncie. He saw you on Nextdoor. There's a post about costumes. Are you sewing for people for money?" "Yes." "Mum, people from my office are seeing this." "Kevin, I sewed at a factory for 40 years. This is normal work." "I'm not saying it isn't, Are you okay financially? Do you need help?" "No, I'm fine." She said it evenly, not hurt because Kevin was asking out of concern, not embarrassment. But "I'm fine" wasn't entirely true either. Minus $430 a month, $390 for medications, $66 lost in fabric. That wasn't fine. That was holding on. "Just let me know," Kevin said. "I will," said Barb, and they both understood she wouldn't. On Friday, at the end of October, Patty knocked, 3 times, quietly. She always knocked differently than Gloria, lighter. She came in with her phone in her hand and laid it on the kitchen table face up. "Barb, look at this." It was Nextdoor. New comments under the old Dylan post, and among them, one from a woman named Christine Wu. "We're from the daycare on Wheeling Avenue. We have Halloween and Christmas programs. We need 12 costumes. Does anyone have Barbara's contact? 12. Barb looked at that number. Can I give her your number? Patty asked. Barb looked at her notebook. At the line. 50% deposit before buying fabric. Go ahead, she said. Christine Wu called on Saturday morning. Her voice was soft and organised. She spoke in measured pauses, like someone who had prepared a list of questions in advance. 12 costumes, 5 for the Halloween party at the end of October, and 7 for the Christmas programme in mid-December. Children ranged from 3 to 6 years old. She would send the list of characters. Barb asked her to call back in an hour. She opened the notebook and did the math. 12 costumes at $85 each, $1,020. Minus materials, fleece, felt, zippers, wire, thread. Based on previous work, roughly $18 to $22 per costume. Materials total, around $250. Net, approximately $770. Provided she delivered on time and all 12 clients showed up. Timeline. 5 Halloween costumes in 3 weeks, 7 Christmas costumes in 6. 2 costumes a week was realistic if she worked 4 to 5 hours a day. Schedule as on the production floor. Monday to Tuesday, cut and start sewing. Wednesday, finish first costume, begin second. Thursday to Friday, second costume. Saturday, fabric and supply run if needed. Sunday, buffer. She called Christine back. I'll take all 12, but I have terms. 50% of the total due upfront before I start work. I buy fabric out of pocket, and I'm not able to absorb the risk if someone changes their mind. This is a business arrangement, not personal. Christine was quiet for 1 second. Barb heard that second, felt the possibility of, I don't know about that. But Christine said, That's reasonable, of course. The deposits came in over 2 days, Venmo from 11 parents. One mother, who had ordered the snowman, wrote, What if it doesn't fit? Barb replied, If it doesn't fit, I'll adjust it. But I'll buy the fabric with your deposit because I can't know in advance whether you'll change your mind, and I can't know the same about mine. The mother agreed. Barb drove to Joanne Fabrics, the only real fabric store in Muncie on McGalliard Road near the Marshalls. She took a cart and walked the aisles. White fleece, orange fleece, brown fleece for the bear, green felt for the little Christmas tree, grey jersey for the mouse, black satin for the witch, orange felt for the pumpkin. She touched every bolt with her hands, hands that knew fabric better than eyes did. This fleece will pill after the second wash. This one won't. This felt holds its shape. That one will go limp. This satin will fray if you look at it wrong. 2 hours, $218 at the register. She wrote a formula in the notebook. 3 lines pulled from 38 years of production logic. Materials come from the deposit. My money stays in my account. She underlined it. The work moved steadily. Cut in the morning, sew through the day, finish the trim in the evening. The singer ran evenly. The pedal rocked under her foot. The thread lay in straight lines. And Barb caught herself humming, quietly, under her breath. Something old, something she used to know, that came back on its own when her hands were occupied. Her back ached by evening, the lower back, where the orthopaedist last year had said, lumbar disc issue, avoid prolonged sitting. Barb avoided prolonged sitting by getting up every hour, walking through the apartment, doing 3 forward bends and 3 back, and then sitting back down, because the gnome costume wasn't going to finish itself. Her fingers went numb toward midnight, especially the index and middle finger of her right hand, the ones that guided the fabric under the presser foot. Her mother's thimble left a red indent on her middle finger that didn't fade until morning. By the 6th costume, she had a rhythm. 2 per week, no faster, no slower. The 9th, a gnome, was finished on a Friday evening. Green felt hat on a wire frame, red fleece vest, beard made of white yarn. She hung it up, stepped back. Good. A real thing. She started the 10th on Saturday morning. A snowman. Polyester fibre-fill body covered in white fleece, orange felt carrot nose, black buttons made of fabric-covered circles, top hat from cardboard covered in black satin. Patty had promised to bring twigs from her backyard for the broom. It was 9 in the evening. The singer was running a circular seam around the snowman's body. The thread was holding steady, and Barb was thinking that 2 more costumes and she could add up the total. The 12th costume was the hardest. A snow queen, which a woman named Lisa had ordered for her 7-year-old daughter Chloe. Barb already knew how she'd do it. A long cape in silver lame, a high stand-up collar, and for the trim on the collar and cuffs, she glanced toward the windowsill, the gold lame. 15 years it had been sitting there. Apparently, it had been waiting for this. The singer made a sound Barb had not heard from it in 38 years. Not a knock, not a scrape. A dry, short snap, as if something thin and metal had fractured inside. The needle stopped mid-stroke. The thread pulled tight and broke. Barb pressed the pedal. Nothing. She turned the hand wheel. The shaft didn't move. Jammed. She removed the side cover, shone a flashlight in. The small one from the tool drawer that had been running on 1 battery for 3 years and always turned up when needed. She saw it immediately. The needle bar, the steel rod that drives the needle up and down, had cracked across, at the connection to the crank mechanism. Not bent, cracked. Metal fatigue. 67 years of daily use, thousands of miles of stitching, and the shaft gave out. Barb called the Singer Service Centre on McGalliard. Automated message, closed for the evening. She found 2 more places online. The first, we don't work on machines older than 1990. No parts available. The second, a repair technician named Gary, answered on the 3rd ring. Singer 99K, 1958 model, Barb said. Needle bar cracked at the crank. Gary was quiet for a moment. That's a specialty part, Barbara. The 99K went out of production in '69. There's nothing in town. I can order it, I have vintage parts contacts, but we're looking at a week minimum. $75 with shipping, plus an hour and a half of labour. Gary, I have 2 costumes not finished. The deadline is 11 days. I understand, but that part physically cannot arrive before next Friday. That's December 6th. The programmes are when? The 12th and the 15th. So 6 days between receiving the part and the deadline. That's workable. If it arrives Friday. Gary paused. If. Barb put the phone down. She looked at the singer, presser foot raised, thread broken, like something wounded that you regret having let get wounded. She looked at the 11 finished costumes hanging around the apartment, from doorknobs, the backs of chairs, the hook in the entryway. A small zoo of fleece and felt, bright and slightly ridiculous. 11 done, 2 not. The snowman, half finished. The snow queen, not started, only cut out. Fabric for both already purchased. Deposits spent on fabric. If she didn't deliver, refund the deposits. 85 plus 85. That money was already gone. It was the fabric now. Which meant pulling from her Social Security. From the 1880. which left maybe $80 of free balance for the month. Minus the refunds, that was nothing. And if she didn't refund, she lost her reputation. Muncie had 70,000 people. Next door saw everything. By tomorrow, the whole neighborhood would know. Barb Kinney took people's money and didn't deliver. And no one would come again. Not for a costume, not for a skirt, not for a zipper on a winter coat. Barb sat at the dead machine and her mother's thimble sat on the windowsill in its glass copper. And outside the first December snow was falling. Fine, nighttime. And the streetlight in the parking lot swayed in the wind and threw shadows across the ceiling like the pendulum of the kitchen clock that ticked on the wall and counted down the days to December 15th. 11 days. 2 machines. 0. She didn't know how long she sat there. The apartment was quiet, only the snow against the window and somewhere next door the television mumbling, the evening news, something about inflation and adjustments to entitlement programs. And Barb thought that the word entitlement always sounds like the name of a disease that has no cure. And then came the knock. 3 times. Loud. Certain. Barb opened the door. Gloria was standing on the landing. In her down coat, winter boots, nose red from the cold, holding a large plaid duffel bag with both hands. That same striped bag Barb had once seen her hauling summer clothes from storage. "Barb," Gloria said, and her voice was businesslike. No apology, no reconciliation in it, as if the 6 weeks of silence had simply not occurred. "I found this at my daughter's, my mother's old Singer 66. It works. I plugged it in. The needle moves. It's heavy as cast iron. I could barely get it here. Where do you want it?" The Singer 66 was cast iron, black, with a moulded pattern on the body. A machine from 1952, built the way things were built when built meant outlasting the person who bought it. Gloria set the bag down, and together, grunting and catching corners on the stair railing, they hauled the machine up to the 2nd floor. From above, the upstairs neighbour looked out, saw 2 women with a cast iron appliance. "Barbara, are you 2 moving in together or opening a museum?" "A factory," Gloria said, not turning around. "Sewing. By appointment only." They put the machine in the kitchen. There was no room in the living room. The Singer 99K was there, along with all 11 costumes. The 66 took the corner between the refrigerator and the window. Barb sat down at it, pressed the foot pedal. The flywheel turned with a low, heavy hum. The needle dropped slower than the 99K, rougher, but with the unhurried certainty of everything made in 1952. She fed a test scrap under the foot. The stitch laid even, long, dense. "It'll take any fabric," Barb said. "My mother hemmed fur coats on it," said Gloria. She stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, watching her friend work. Neither of them said the word sorry. Neither mentioned the skirt. Gloria had simply come with a machine. Barb had let her in and put the kettle on. 30 years of friendship didn't need explanation. It needed action. And a cast iron Singer 66 weighing 55 pounds was action enough. "Gloria," said Barb, not looking up from the test seam, "sit down, tea's ready, and hold this." She held out the edge of the white fleece piece she'd started for the snowman. It needed to be stretched with both hands while the seam ran around the circumference. Gloria took it without a word, sat on the stool, pulled the fabric taut. And they worked like that, in the quiet, only the Singer 66 humming and the kettle clicking on the stove. And outside, the first December snow settled on the windowsill and did not melt. Barb finished the snowman in 2 days. The 66 was slower than the 99K, but the fibre-fill stuffing that had made the 99K skip stitches went through the 66 like paper. The snowman came out round and solid, with an orange felt carrot and a top hat made of cardboard covered in black satin. Patty brought backyard twigs, and Gloria tied them into a broom with kitchen twine. Carefully, though Gloria had admitted she could barely thread a needle. I poke the thread at the eye 3 times before it goes, Barb. What use am I? But she held fabric, handed scissors, kept the kettle going, brought blueberry muffins from her kitchen, thin, slightly burned at the edges, because Gloria cooked the way she did most things, with enthusiasm and without precision. She came every evening, not to help sew, to be there. And the quiet that had lived in the apartment for 6 weeks filled up again with a voice, the way a room fills when you open the window and let the air back in. The skirt they spoke about exactly once, between the second cup of tea and fitting the snowman. Gloria said, "I took it to the shop, he fixed it for 55, and burned a spot on the lining with the iron." Barb looked at her, and they both made the same sound at the same moment. Not a laugh, but a quiet exhale of recognition. The burn mark cost more than 6 weeks of silence, and both of them knew it. Barb saved the Snow Queen for the final 3 days. She had thought about it for 2 days before deciding. A long flared cape to the child's ankles, silver lame for the body, white satin lining so the lame wouldn't scratch and the cape would fall softly off the shoulders. And for the trim, the collar and cuffs, the gold lame from the windowsill. She cut it slowly, with the long dressmaker's shears, following a soap chalk line, an old factory trick because chalk damages the pile, but soap leaves a faint white line that disappears after the first pressing. The fabric came apart with a soft sound, like a whisper. She had always liked that sound. The 66 couldn't sew the lame. The presser foot would crush the threads. Barb attached the trim by hand, using a blind stitch, the mother's thimble on her middle finger, needle entering at 45 degrees, thread lying invisible, as if the collar and cuffs had grown from the cape on their own. 4 hours of work. Her back burned from her waist to her shoulders, and she stood every 30 minutes, 3 bends forward, 3 back, and sat back down, because there were 3 days until the programme. The cape was done on December 10th. Barb hung it on the hook in the entryway and stepped back. The silver lame caught the lamplight and threw it back cold and clean. The gold lame on the collar and cuffs lay with a deep, still lustre. The same gold it had always been. The gold from a factory floor in 2011. From a disposal sheet. From a warehouse manager who signed her name on the last day. The crown, silver cardboard covered in the remaining lame with sharp pointed tips, stood on the shelf beside the thimble. Lisa came that evening with Chloe. The girl was 7, slight, with a braid past her waist. She put on the cape in the entryway, looked in the mirror, and went still. Not with joy, with something more like amazement. She stood in the Snow Queen's cape and crown, the gold lame at her collar, and was quiet for almost a minute before she said softly, "Mum, I look real." Lisa paid $85, photographed Chloe, and said in the stairwell, Barb could hear through the closed door, "This is better than what you get in a store. This is better than what you get at the theatre costume shop on Walnut." All 12 costumes were delivered by December 15th. Not one complaint. Barb put a check mark in the notebook beside each name and drew a line. 12 at 85, 1,020. Minus materials and supply trips, 258. Net, 762. Social Security for December, 1,580. Plus 762 from costumes. In hand, 2,342. Minus 820 rent, 174 Medicare, 185 medications, 340 groceries, 160 utilities. Balance, $663. Plus. Not minus, plus. Barb circled the number twice, pressing hard enough that the pen went through the paper. The part for the 99K arrived from Gary on December 23rd, 8 days after the last program. Gary replaced it in an hour and a half, charged $130 including labour, and said, "Barbara, you should think about a new machine. The 99K has earned its retirement." Barb looked at him and said, "Gary, she's been retired for 12 years. So have I. We're both still working." The 66 stayed in the kitchen. Gloria said, "Leave it there. I don't need it, and clearly you do. Consider it your backup, like me, your backup friend." They both made that quiet exhale again, both at the same moment. And then the phone rang. Unknown number. Barb looked at the screen, then answered. "Barbara Kinney? This is Diane Holloway. I ordered 3 costumes from you in October. The cat, the witch, Dracula." Barb said nothing for 1 second. "Yes," she said, "I remember." "Barbara, I owe you an explanation. I know this sounds like an excuse, but it's the truth. My mother had a stroke on October 23rd. I drove to Louisville that same day and was there for 3 weeks. I dropped my phone in the parking lot outside the hospital on the first day. I didn't get a new one until November, and I never recovered the messages from the old number. I didn't have your contact." She spoke evenly and quickly, the way someone speaks who is accustomed to explaining complicated things precisely. "My mother is home now, in rehabilitation. Are the costumes still with you? I'll pick them up and pay in full." "I sold them to other people," Barb said. "I didn't have a choice. But I'm not asking you to cover the fabric. That was my decision to start without a deposit, and I paid for it myself." A long pause. "Barbara, Diane stopped. "I'd like to meet in person, not only because of this. There's something I want to discuss." They arranged to meet Friday at the Starbucks on Madison Street. Diane arrived exactly at 3, small in a business coat with a folder under her arm. She laid an envelope on the table before she sat down. $255, the full amount of the order. There are no costumes, but the money is yours." "Diane, please take it. I don't know how to do it otherwise." Barb took the envelope. Diane opened the folder. "Barb, I'm the costume coordinator at Muncie Community Theatre. I've been there 9 years. We do 3 productions a year, spring, fall, and December. We've always had trouble finding reliable people to sew custom work. I saw the Snow Queen. Lisa showed a photo in a group chat we share. It's extraordinary. The gold lame on the collar, that's professional work, not a very good amateur. That's real construction." Barb listened. "I need someone who sews consistently. 8 costumes per production, 3 productions per year, plus ongoing minor repairs and alterations during rehearsals. I can offer $95 per costume. That's below what theatrical shops charge for custom work, but it's steady. And repairs are $25 an hour. We always have that work." Barb was calculating while Diane talked. 8 at 95, $760, 3 productions, $2,280 a year in costumes, plus repairs, 2 hours a week was $200 a month. Monthly average, around $400. "My machine is broken," Barb said. "Well, repaired, but the 99K is from 1958. That's not what I want to be doing theatre work on long term. I need a new machine before I can say yes." Diane nodded. "That's sensible. Let me know when you're ready." Barb called Kevin that same evening. She was the one who called, which was unusual. She normally waited for him to call. But this time she dialed. "Kevin, I have a business conversation for you. I just want you to listen to the numbers." "Mum, is everything okay?" "Everything is fine. Listen." She talked for 10 minutes, briefly, no extras. Social Security, the monthly deficit, the December costumes, the theatre offer. Numbers only. Income, expenses, potential. Kevin was quiet for several seconds after she finished. "Mum," he said, "when did you learn to talk like this?" "Kevin, I managed a production floor for 38 years. "I know, but—" A pause. "How much is the machine?" "A solid entry-level Singer, around $340, available at Walmart." "I'll send it on Venmo, tonight." "Kevin, it's a loan. I'm returning it from the first theatre check." "Mum, you don't have to." "I do. These are business terms, Kevin. I'm not asking for money. I'm borrowing working capital." Another pause. Then Kevin laughed. Not with condescension, but with that specific surprise people have when someone they've known their whole life does something unexpected. "All right, Mum. Business terms. Deal." The money came 20 minutes later. The new machine, a Singer heavy-duty 4452, black with a metal body, arrived from the Walmart website the next day. Barb unpacked it at the kitchen table, threaded it, ran a test stitch on a scrap of fleece. The stitch was perfect. She called Diane. "Ready," said Barb. The first theatre order came in January. 8 costumes for the spring production of Alice in Wonderland. Barb received the list. Alice, the Cheshire Cat, the White Rabbit, the March Hare, the Mad Hatter, the Queen of Hearts, the Knight, the Caterpillar. Measurements from Diane. 6 weeks. Fabric budget advanced by the theatre. She saved the Queen of Hearts for last, the most complex, the one that needed not just construction but intention. Red satin, white collar, gold trim. She thought about it for 2 days. Then she opened the bottom drawer of the dresser, the one she hadn't opened in a while, and found what she was looking for. Not the gold lame, which had gone on the Snow Queen, but a piece of thin gold silk, also from Hartwell, also written off, also from 2011. She had forgotten it was there. It had been waiting. The financial picture at the end of January was this. Social Security, $1,580. Income from theatre and ongoing orders, approximately $520 per month on average. Total income, $2,100. Rent, minus $820. Medicare, minus $174. Medications, minus $185. Groceries, minus $340. Utilities, minus $160. Bus, minus $75. Total expenses, $1,754. Monthly balance, plus $346. She repaid Kevin in 3 weeks, Venmo, exactly $340, with the note, "Return of working capital." Kevin replied with one word, respect. In March, Christine from the daycare wrote again. "We have a graduation ceremony in June, 20 children. Would you take it on?" Barb asked for the list of looks and added, 50% deposit, as usual. Christine replied, "Of course, I've already told everyone about your terms." It was that same week that Barb was at CVS, a routine trip for medications. Walking past aisle 3, she stopped, picked up the BioFreeze from the shelf, looked at the price, put it in the basket. Then, the reading glasses with the magnifier strip, which she had been putting off for 2 years. Then the vitamins, which the orthopedist had recommended a year ago and which she hadn't bought because $11.99 was not quite a medical expense. It was an extra line in the budget. At the register, she pulled out her debit card. She didn't run the math in her head first. She just paid. In the car, she called Brenda. "Brenda, Lily's recital. When is it?" "Mum, what?" "When? I'm buying a bus ticket." "May 12th. But, Mum, you—" "I'll be there. And I'm making Lily's graduation dress. Something the whole school will remember. Tell her." A long pause. Longer than usual. Not the hurried pause of someone searching for words, but the stillness of someone looking at a person they have known their whole life and seeing something new. "Mum," Brenda said slowly, "where did the money come from?" "I earned it, Brenda, with these hands, the ones that sewed at a factory for 38 years. Turns out they're worth something without the factory." Another pause. "Mum, Lily told me last week she wants to learn to sew. She keeps asking how clothes are made." "I'll teach her," said Barb. "We'll start with the thimble, the way my mother started with me." She ended the call and set the phone on the passenger seat, started the engine, the heater. Muncie, grey, March, ordinary, lay beyond the windshield. The China buffet, the auto shop, the closed movie theatre, all the same. Barb was different. That evening, she sat at the new singer on the kitchen table, where before there had only been the blue check tablecloth. Gloria sat on the chair beside her, tea in hand, with the look of someone who had nowhere else to be. Barb spread white cotton across the table, new, bought yesterday at Joanne, dense and even under her palms, and reached for her mother's thimble. Copper, with its fine ridging, warm from the room. She slipped it onto the middle finger of her right hand. It fit close, familiar, like a ring you never take off. She picked up the shears, large, black-handled dressmaker's scissors, the ones that remembered 1,000 yards of fabric from Hartwell and had never been resharpened because the right scissors hold their edge if you treat them correctly. She began to cut. Not patching, not hemming, not adjusting someone else's work to someone else's measurements. Cutting from scratch, from the design in her head, without a pattern, by eye, the way she had learned, and the way only 2 other women on the Hartwell floor had known. This was Lily's dress. Graduation. White cotton, full skirt, lace collar. She had seen it already in the car driving back from Joanne with the cotton folded on the back seat. The kind of dress Lily would stand in front of a mirror wearing and say what you only say as a child and only about something real. On the windowsill, the glass shot glass sat empty. The gold lame had gone on the Snow Queen. The gold silk had gone on the Queen of Hearts. The shelf was bare. Barb glanced at it, then smiled, quietly to herself, and turned back to the fabric. At Joanne, there had been one piece of blue Duchess satin on the bolt, heavy with a cold lustre, like the winter sky on a clear day. Barb had bought it 2 weeks before she knew what for. She just hadn't wanted to leave it. It was beautiful. It could wait. In the kitchen, the singer hummed steadily. Gloria was saying something about the neighbour on the 3rd floor and his dog, and outside on Glenwood Avenue the March night lay under a thin snow. Ordinary, grey, hers. And in the quiet of the apartment there were only 2 sounds. The voice of her friend, and the steady, even rhythm of the shears moving through white cotton. If you're looking at retirement right now and thinking that the skill you have, sewing, cooking, teaching, calculating, explaining, building, organising, is something that belonged to a previous life and isn't worth anything anymore, you are probably wrong. A skill doesn't disappear when a factory closes. It waits. Barb didn't understand this right away. She understood it the night the singer locked up, and it seemed like everything had fallen apart. And it turned out it hadn't. A friend arrived with another machine. A customer came back with an explanation. The work that had been done found people who wanted it. Reputation is not something you announce. It's something built from 12 costumes delivered on time and one honest conversation about a seam that wasn't right. If you have questions, write in the comments. And if you've found a way to turn a skill into income after you retired, share it. How you started, what helped, what was hard. The story is always worth telling. Like this post so that those who need to see this story right now will see it. And subscribe. Here, we share stories about people who stopped being shy and started making money doing what they do best.